Welcome to the Redvee TV Instant Reaction, supported by Chapel House Cars for the 2024 season. Following St Helens' 16 points to 12 defeat here at the Brick Stadium in Wigan this evening. After giving them absolute pelters last week, Kev, which fully deserved, I'll say after that tonight, I'm extremely proud of the effort, the application. And that's what we said on the show this week. That's what you want to see. If don't mind losing, you can take losing, as long as the effort is there, and it was there in abundance tonight. And you have to say at the end, we're probably a little bit gutted that we've come away with a defeat, because we were in that game for so long, and we could have easily took the win in the end.
Yeah, it's the minimum that you expect as a fan to see your team putting in the effort. And we said at the Salford game, we kind of played within ourselves. Castleford might as well have been a pre-season friendly the way that we turned out, and I don't think many players came out of that game with positives to say. They were a handful. Tonight we've gone out there, and you'd be surprised if there wasn't that kind of push to show energy, to kind of put a performance in. And before the game, I think that if a lot of fans in there said we're going to get beat by 20, then they'd have said, yeah, I expect it. But to come away and...
Don't want to get run over by the ambulance, otherwise we'll be in it.
It's probably not the worst thing to get run over by. But to actually come away from that with a narrow defeat after being in it for so long, yeah, you're going to be disappointed, aren't you?
Team comes out. Harry Robertson is in at full-back. Jack Welsby goes into the halves. Lewis Dodd is dropped. For all the reasons we discussed on the show this week, Paul Wellens has come out before the game on a Sky interview and basically said he's not been dropped because he's leaving. He's been dropped because there's elements of his game he needs to go and work on. Fair assessment?
Yeah, I think so. We kind of watched it back and saw a lot of drop-off balls and a lot of... I'm not going to say no effort, but it just looked a little bit...
Blasé.
Yeah, great word for it. A little bit lax, a little bit not what you need your scrum half. If your forwards aren't making the yards, you need him to keep the defence honest. And I feel like it was almost a lackadaisical, we're going to beat these, it doesn't really matter last week against Cass. If any one of our players turns up and puts in, or is perceived to put in that performance, they deserve to be sat in the stands.
I'm going to be angry now.
Okay.
If we put that performance in, I know it's easy because it's a derby against Cass, against Salford.
Oh,
you don't lose the games. I know it's easy to say, and sport doesn't work like that.
Yeah,
but
the knee-jerk, and we are party to reading quite a bit on social media. There's a lot that's good, and a lot that is salient. There's good points in there, and there's a lot of absolute tosh. Honestly, that is rubbish said.
That's just our feed.
Yeah. But there's comments on there that are absolute rubbish, founded in nothing. Throw enough muck at a wall and it'll stick. It's frustrating because you put them performances in against Salford and Cass, and you know what? You might come away still with a defeat against the likes of Salford. But we put the same amount of effort into Cass as we've done tonight. And we're walking away from it going, we've beat them 24 points to 6. It wasn't a great game, but, well, it's 2 points on the board, and we're not talking about any kind of big worries at the club, are we? The issue is, you're always going to get that pushback on a derby. You're probably going to get something similar next week, or you're going to expect something similar next week. It needs to be more consistent throughout the season, and I think that's where we've fallen down against some of these teams.
Are you glad that Wello went bold, though, and did what needed to be done? Now, with the amount of injuries we've got and our struggles in certain areas this year, I think we can all say it's going to be a struggle to win a trophy this year. So, by putting Harry Robertson in the team, who is one of the players of the future of this club, are you potentially giving him his wings this season to help you in future years? Because after that performance tonight from him, I'd leave him in the team, and you give Jack Welsby a run in the halves alongside Johnny Lomax, because that potentially solves your problem for 2025.
Well, and gives you the backup of Moses slotted in.
And then you can look at bringing backs in rather than having to find an emergency half-back to cover for a year until George Whitby's potentially ready.
Yeah, as long as you're bringing them in when they're ready. And people, I said this on the show on Wednesday, people say you need to bring in the academy halfback without naming a name, without giving them reason. It's easy fodder to put out there on social media and then go, I said that. If you're giving someone...
Again, throw enough suggestions, one will stick at some point.
Stick at some point. With Harry Robertson, we've almost seen his stock rise this season. And we've spoken to people who've known him for quite a bit and said he's rapid, he's good on the ball, he's confident. It's another step up. But you're giving him because he's currently on that rich vein of form in the academy. So why don't you get him in here? And I saw someone, and it's, again, a good point.
And there might be times where you do take him out for a game or two.
Yeah. Yeah, and you will do, because you're not going to play him. If we were at the start of the season, you're not going to play him for 27 games and then playoffs. And it's the same with the likes of Johnny Vaughan. And there was a great point made by someone who said, if Johnny Vaughan's the future, why has he not been in a little bit more above the likes of Sam Royal at second row? It's a good point, but I almost think they see Johnny Vaughan as a centre rather than a second row. He's almost a centre who can fill in a bit like Percy does. It'll bring us on to a question in a bit, which is about the interchanges again. But yeah, you're right that bringing Robertson in tonight, I think he's done great. Couple of mistakes which you've got to expect from a young lad. You can't expect him to have an absolutely faultless game.
But I'd rather make the mistakes because he's trying something.
Yeah, exactly right. And he you know what? He looked bright. He looked sharp, and hopefully he can take that confidence into the next couple of games. Because, as you say, unless people are pulling it out in training, he's putting a performance there that he should be starting fullback.
Shades of Regan Grace,
yeah.
When he made his debut and just give us that little bit of spark.
A point of difference. It was a shame because Adam Swift was the fella who was dropped that day because he'd had a bit of a rough time. But then you unearth your next one. But they've got to be ready. There's no point just dropping someone in just because everyone on social media...
You're potentially going to get time on the training ground now to build combinations with Harriet playing at one. So for me, that's how it stays. Yeah. Wello playing a little bit of 4D chess before the game, naming Iggy Parsi at loose forward. Is that a case of we just wanted to get 3 big players on the pitch and try and match Wigan early on? Which, well, didn't really work because Matty Lees gets sent to the sin bin.
Possibly. I was a little bit, I'm not going to lie, I was a little bit perplexed with it. I still think you need...
Maybe we knew Lees was going to get sin bin, so we
needed a big man on.
Yeah. I saved an interchange, not that we use them all anyway.
No, I think that... exactly, we'll get onto that in a bit. I think that going with the big man was obviously to try and match Wigan, but Wigan had probably a bigger bench. And I almost think that, you know what, leave James Bell there, play Sam Royal second row or Johnny Vaughan second row if that's what you're going to go for, and be able to bring on another big man. Again, it sounds like it's in hindsight, but when we were down in the pub earlier on, I just thought it was a little bit of a strange one throwing him in at 13, and then we just rotated him and Noah throughout the first and second half up until about 73-75 minutes when we make another change.
Jake Burns went to the loo before the kick-off and got locked in.
He must have.
No, to be fair with Jake Burns, was there opportunity to bring him on in that game with Clark going so well?
That's a good point because Clark has given you the spark that you want from 9
to start the fire.
But is that not an opportunity to put Clark at 13, leave him on the park, and bring Jake Burns on 10 minutes before half time, 5 minutes after half time? I don't know.
Hindsight's a wonderful thing.
It's easy watching. It's easy when it's not your job on the line.
Nice.
From the stand.
I've not started by talking about the refereeing because I don't want this to be a show where we're blaming the loss and the defeat on the refereeing. But I do not like how the game is being officiated. It started after a minute with the Wigan man staying down. Liam Moore didn't see anything wrong with it. He stays down long enough to force the stoppage, and then we start looking at a screen and we're re-reffing games. We don't like it in football, and we're now re-reffing games where Liam Moore turns around and stands there looking at a big screen. And all of a sudden it goes from what should be play on, and the Wigan player gets up and walks away. He's literally stayed down to force the referee to look at the screen, and he's gone to his pocket and sent him to the sin bin. It's a derby. Them tackles happen. I know you. I thought he was going to ground. I didn't see much wrong with it. Can I just point out before everybody kicks off on our socials? We are talking after watching it in the stadium, not after sitting at home, watching on TV and listening to John Wells, listening to Matty Pete and telling what he should say. And everyone else. But that was like, right, that's how the game's getting refereed today. So it's happened a few more times during the game, and he's not done it. There was one on Matty Lees where it was it was similar, if not worse, than what Lees did in the second half. Doesn't even give a penalty. There's one in that first 10 minutes where Wigan knock on, Robertson picks up in back play, gets dumped on his head. Brad O'Neill got a ban this week for less than that. Doesn't give anything. I'm perplexed with some of the decision making. That first 10 minutes, it felt like everything was against us. In hindsight, you have to say that first 10 minutes, us against the world, spared on the performance. This is rant.
It definitely galvanised us. Everyone who now calls it Wendy ball or looks down on football for play acting and for trying to get a decision, I can't wait to see Wendy League starting to trend on social media, because I hate myself for saying this next sentence. I absolutely hate myself. You've got to stay down. You've got to make the ref.
Every time you feel you've had contact with the head, you stay on the floor.
You've got to. You've 100% got to. And you then can't blame opposition or our players for doing it. There'll be jeers, there'll be boos, but you've got to do it, because then you're making the referee make a decision. I mean, we've seen it once. I've kind of seen it on half a big screen, and you think, if they're the rules, if that's a yellow and they're the rules, unfortunately. Are we now pointing something?
That's the north stand. That's the south stand. North.
Are you now trying to work it out? West.
Yes.
West. I just like watching you try and do that. Try and work it. Never eat shredded wheat. Do you want me to just set this again? I'm talking.
You ever seen the Simpsons episode where Homer's there and they go to his brain and there's just two monkeys scratching each other's asses? That was my brain in that
moment. It was a donkey playing a banjo.
Yeah, but if that's the bar that has been set so early in the game, he's then just completely dismissed it for the rest of it.
Yeah, unfortunately, if that's now a yellow and we're going to go down those routes, then you should be seeing probably 3 or 4 yellows a game, and the 20,000 and odd crowd who were delighted by a good game of rugby league tonight will soon be 8,000, because people will walk away from it. That's not blaming Liam Moore. That's blaming.
You've got to change. You've got to change this system where if the referees not give a decision and a player decides to stay down, then you bring the video in afterwards.
What have you got on report for then? Do we still have it? Can you do that? And as you say, I'm not blaming the referee.
If the referee's not giving a decision, don't use the screen. That's it. Just put it on report and look after it.
Unless it's
blatant.
Unless it's blatant and a big decision.
What's it in the football? Clear and obvious errors. Yeah. If it's not if the referee's not missed something clear and obvious, none of them decisions were. Yeah. And listen, we did it a couple of times in the game as well.
Of course
because obviously we'd seen what was happening. And it's like you know now players aren't staying down because they're hurt.
Which is
clearly shown by how quickly they all got.
Wendy League. Right, people who call it Wendy ball now need to and look down on football for exactly the same thing. Must be looking at our game and going, we're going the same way.
You can argue Wigan's winning try came from doing exactly the same thing. On the last 5 metres out, he lies down on the floor looking for a decision to try and get that penalty to kick the 2 and win the game. Doesn't get it, but that minute or so, you watch the Wigan backline all organising what a set play they were going to run, and they score off the back of it.
I know you can argue it. It's just a shame to see it creeping into the game from both sides. Like,
some would call it professional.
Some would call it professional. I see it as
cheating.
You said it.
I'll use the word. A couple of our other tries we've conceded. Naivety.
Yeah.
Utter naivety. There's 2 occasions in the game. Ritten's been forced into touch, running the ball back and going wide with it first go, just come inside. Listen, does that come with the fact he's not had a lot of game time? Potentially. Ben Davies, similar. But Wigan, do you hand it to Wigan's good defence?
Yeah, you do.
Bit of both.
Yeah, you do. I think T. Ritson was markedly better than he was, and it probably is game time. And just getting that run of games, do you leave him until the end of the season? You could argue that, you know what, if you're going to go with it and Connie's got a neck injury, you could bring Wonga back into the centres and play Makinson and Ritson on the wings. Yeah, it's just about it is about getting time. I'm still not saying he's a starting winger, but I think he's done miles better.
I think if we're basing on a long-term, overarching helicopter view, we've both decided John Bennison, T. Ritson aren't the long-term future of that position. But after giving him pelters last week,
you've got to give him the plaudits of not doing badly.
So what was I saying to you last week? He wasn't coming in taking the carries. He did that tonight.
Yeah.
So listen, fair play. Lad's justified his shirt. He's justified the faith that Welland's put in him to keep him in the team this week. He keeps his shirt next week.
Yeah. Unless you're getting people back and unless you get making some back.
The important thing here is there's no agenda.
No.
We'll say what we see. People might not agree with us, but we'll say what we see, and we're not going to just target players.
Oh, I'm not part of a cult who thinks that one player should be playing every single week. People know my love of Johnny Lomax, but my love of Johnny Lomax does then not extend to if he has a bad game, then should he be picked next week?
Lomax got.
He's probably got.
Lomax got a bit last week, didn't he?
Yeah.
And he's been off for a few weeks. The argument is, he's had probably been carrying a hand injury. He's coming towards the end of his career. Has he been hampered by his half-back partner?
Possibly. I thought he looked lively tonight, Johnny. I thought he looked good, and it's probably with him being the dominant half and almost telling Jack what he's doing rather than the other way around and taking the instruction off his 7. Him being the 7 possibly works a little bit better, mainly because of the experience. Whether that's he just doesn't work with Dodd, and it's just that it just doesn't work. Yeah,
combination doesn't work, and you'd love to have been a fly on the wall because obviously Wellens has had. I'm not using the word. I'll just say conversations with the senior players in the team, and some home truths have obviously probably come out there.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to know what the senior players have said about what's been going wrong, whether that is on field or off field in training.
Yeah, and it wouldn't surprise me if there's a little bit of both. A little bit of we need to work a little bit more ball in hand, but also on the park we need X, Y, and Z. We need this more as a structure. I think we need to strengthen one wing and then push it. So Percy switches sides tonight.
There was attacking structure as well.
Yeah.
There was a structure. Again, we called it last week. There was because we were watching and thinking, what are we trying to do? At least you could see a style of play tonight, and bar one or two. Like Siren gets the ball out once or twice. If Wonga goes for the line, you probably get a couple more points. That comes with time.
Yeah, of course it does. I think that's one thing that what you wanted to see tonight was a kick on from the past couple of weeks. You need to see it. It's not just that. You need to see it next week. You need to see it the week after. You need to see that building until the end of the season. That's step one.
Saints will get bodies back.
Yeah.
Are Wigan in trouble if Bevan French is injured at the end of the year?
I think I've said that I don't think Bevan French knows what he's going to do, so no one can defend against him. I'm not saying that as a disparaging thing.
No, but yeah, I'm not even. Sorry, there's not a but here. Wigan look a completely different team. And listen, we look a different team with some of our big players.
Yeah, of course you do. You miss your big players, obviously. I think especially Bevan French rather than Field. I think French is the real star. As I say, I think it's one of them that he's so unpredictable. Sometimes he doesn't know what he's going to do as he's going to the line. It's not disparaging. It's just the genius that comes from him. Without him, and without a 9, obviously today, they've beat us. Yeah,
I thought we struggled with Harry Smith.
but were they brilliant? Would a Wigan fan come away from that going, we were tremendous, we really put them
I think
to the
Wigan.
sword,
I think Wigan. If we're stood here as Wigan fans, I think we're stood here saying probably got away with one there.
You're probably saying that we missed a 9 more than anything.
I thought Harry Smith was really good for them. How many times on the last does he just shimmy and go round and instead of kicking him goes left?
Good puts out to the left wing.
And then Liam Marshall gets the ball and he does that really good crossfield kick.
Well, I
dangerous,
thought
isn't he?
we thought that Liam Marshall was going to be the game difference tonight while we were in the stadium. Said that he was probably going to be the one who was going to break a line and go in and do us. It wasn't. It was a young fullback. But they just looked dangerous, and I think he stepped up to the mark there, and he's needed to because he's not been surrounded by the usual.
But it does come back. It does come back to we're light in the backs, aren't we? We're still not. We're not right. That's for me. That's where we need to be looking to bring players in.
Yes, and that's where you want the next statement from the club to be. You're going to get 3,500 plus at Wigan away.
I did notice the propaganda from the club before the game that come out. It's obviously propaganda. Propaganda's the right word. I'll go with. Basically, we have gone with the decision. This is our future. These are our leaders. They put out all the young lads and made a point of doing it. Listen, is that as close to us saying it's transition? Get behind them.
Yeah, I saw someone ask, what do you mean by transition? And I think because we're giving contracts out to like older players, I think if you're looking at transition as a 2 or 3 month thing or even a year thing, you're looking at transition wrong. To me, transition is 2-3 year cycle that, we've given Alex Walmsley and Johnny Lomax a deal that is going to see him through the next couple of years, but you're already looking at who's going to replace them, and we've replaced James Roby with Darryl Clark, so there's one change. We've got to replace our halfback because Lewis Doddy's going. You're going to replace you're going to eventually replace Lomax. You're replacing Tommy Makers. There's 12 off contract. That's what I would mean by transition.
I think if people go back to our episode the other week where we've put the squad up, there's a load off contract in 2025.
Yeah.
You can't turn over maybe 8 or 9 of them at once. You're going to have to give a few of them another year because you can only realistically turn over 3-4 a year maximum.
Of your first team, probably of your squad players, you can do more. But again, it goes back to my points that I made last week or the week before of how many of these young lads make it, how many good enough to come in and make it. We've been lucky that we've had George Delaney coming in. We've been lucky we've had Noah Stevens coming in. We've been lucky we've had the likes of John Bennison coming in because he's been good for us, if not a world beater.
If you get 2 from your academy who come from an academy team who come through and are genuine first teamers, you've done well.
Yeah, I think so. And Saints are probably looking at more. It's possibly different to football, as I've said in the past, that you're looking and you think Jake Burns could be a backup hooker at the minute. I know he's a little bit older and he's come through a different pathway, so he could be a backup hooker. You're probably looking at Noah and Johnny Vaughan, from this year, who are the ones who have come through. Harry Robertson, possibly he's come through 3-4 months earlier than we expect.
And people listen, we've seen it on social media, people talking about the club need to put their hand in the pocket. The club are putting their hand in the pocket, funding your pathways. That is just as important as bringing players into the club.
What did I say about throwing enough muck at a wall and some of it sticking? People just make things up.
Clark was great tonight, I thought.
Sheringham was better tonight.
Yeah. I thought James Bell's still a little bit off it. Is that a case of he's much better coming off the bench?
He's a better impact player.
Yeah.
Possibly so, yeah. I think we mentioned it during the game. I think when people see James Bell coming off and complimenting Morgan Knowles, I think that just shows the beauty of Morgan Knowles playing for the team. That, he kind of lays that platform. Doesn't really play an old school 13, more as a prop, really, a third prop. And then James Bell can come on and change the game up from the start, is he quite as effective? I don't necessarily think I've seen it in every single one of his performances. That's it, again, it's not having a go at the lad, because you know you're going to get bundles of energy from him. I just think that some people are more suited to a role, and he's doing a great job starting for us, to be fair. It's just probably not as good as when he comes off the bench.
Okay, just to finish off, we've got Warrington at home next week. We need to see the same again. Is there a little bit of a worry that we've expended that much energy tonight? Next week's going to be harder.
Interchange.
Well, we haven't talked interchange, have we?
This is exactly where I'm going into it. You talk about expending energy. We've not brought Jake Burns on. We've not brought Sam Royal on. And we've brought Johnny Vaughan on with 5-7 minutes to go. If you don't trust him, what is the point? Are you just waiting for an injury?
Is it a case?
We've tried winning that game. We've tried winning that game with 14 points.
Is it a case? Not that case. You're saying you don't trust the interchange, but it's a case of you haven't got anyone else. But then again, is that a point where Jav Lewis Dodd on the bench just come on at 9?
I think you've got to.
Or is a line in the sand been drawn there, and we've literally that is the point we're making. You're out the team.
But I don't think Jake Burns had a bad game against Cass. I thought he brought a point of difference.
I would argue there was probably the plan to use Jake Burns tonight, but because Clark was going so well, there wasn't the opportunity to bring him off unless you move him.
You move him to 13 if need be. But the issue is, when you're trying to do it with 14, you're expending the energy of them 14, and you're not giving the lads who you may well need against Warrington, against Lee, against whoever's coming up, you need them to be match sharp.
Just be bold.
And if you're doing it 10 minutes before half time and going, right, this is your 10 minutes, or 5 minutes before half time, 5 minutes after half time, I am resting Curtis Sunderland for 20 minutes because it's 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, and 10 minutes at half time. But Sam Royal, you've got to come on and you're doing 5 minutes here and 5 minutes there. Just got to be stronger with them. Are they as good? We've made this point. We have made this point over and over again that they might not necessarily have the ability of the players they're replacing, but they have the energy levels that you've got to tap into.
Yeah, I think a bar has been set tonight in terms of effort that we expect.
Oh, yeah, you definitely expect it.
And if we go with that for the rest of the year, whatever happens. It won't be for want of trying. Yeah. And I think the fans will be happy with that. That contract for Wello is coming back out that drawer.
Get the big. I've got the big biro in my pocket.
Sign it quick. Sign it. Get him sorted. Get it sorted this week before anybody can moan again.
Can Lee sign it as well, Lee Breeze, if we're going down that route?
Wello's pulling him out his back pocket.
It probably is. Yeah. Yeah. We'll see what happens with
that. I would argue there's enough there. If Wello goes in for a meeting with the board and he goes, look, this is what I want. Attack hasn't been quite right this year, but I want to bring Lee Breers in. I've had look how we've performed. We've lost again tonight by 4 points. We've lost 4 games by under 4 points. But I've done it without 9 internationals. I think he gets a 12-month extension, and we see how we go next year. And hopefully you don't have such an injury crisis.
Yeah, I'd probably try and get a Men in Black pen for the Castleford game though, because I wouldn't try and claim that as one of the less than 4 points. Well, we got beat by less than 4 points. Apart from Castleford, which we obviously won, I would not be putting that on me. I wouldn't be putting that on the list.
Right, we're back at Wello in. We were never Wello out. We just said I'd struggle to give an argument last week. Yeah. I'll give it. I can. Back with I've got an argument to.
Davey flip flop here.
No. I've never said out. I've just said I've been of the opinion that he should be given an extension. But after last week, I would struggle to provide the argument as to why. That 80 minutes has given me an argument why. And do you know what? There's not one fan who's come out to that ground tonight who hasn't been happy with what they've seen from that team. It was shown by the reception the players got at the end of the game. It was shown by the reception that Paul Wellens got when he came on from the crowd. The fans who were here tonight were firmly behind the club, as the club asked for.
Yeah.
That it?
Good point to leave it on, I think,
yes.
David.
We'll have to give a round of applause to Redvee Jr.
Yeah. Give a round of applause for me. I've been up since 5:45. I'm tired.
I think she's expecting the Mackies on the way home.
Is she? Oh, we're having a Mackies on the way home.
Can do.
Oh, happy days.
Don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and we'll be back during the week for another episode of Redvee TV. Catch you soon.